Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. This week we're going to be in the greenhouse. I'm going to show you how to prune your grapevine and give you some tips on keeping the frost away. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels, and first of all, Happy New Year to wherever you are in the world. So hope 2020 is a good year for you. Today we've come into the greenhouse. It's a bit cold and damp outside, so we've come to do a few jobs in here. One of the great things about having a small greenhouse means that you can potter when the weather's inclement outside, which is ideal. Some people keep them cold through the winter and just use them as storage or to keep hardy plants in. I heat mine to keep the frost off, so it's not particularly warm in here, it's just frost free, and I aim to keep the temperature at about 5 or 6 degrees C, which is around 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and that means I can overwinter a range of plants if I keep them fairly dry, things like citrus and pelargoniums and abutilons, and lots of plants that won't stand the frost. So that's the reason I do it. But I also grow a grapevine in the greenhouse, which runs down the centre ridge of the greenhouse. It's a variety called the strawberry vine. It's called that because the grapes are pink and they're very sweet and have a strawberry flavour to them about August, September time. Quite unusual, so we'll come back and look at those later on in the year. The time to do the winter pruning on any grapevine, indoors or outdoors, is when it's totally dormant. And it's especially important if you've got it in a greenhouse and you've got a little bit of heat. The sap starts to rise really early in the season. So I always say the cut-off point needs to be the end of January, otherwise the wounds will bleed. So here we've got this vine. It's had a little bit of pruning late summer when we harvested the grapes off it, but I've got all these twiggy bits. And what we're trying to do with a vine, this is what we call a rod system method of pruning. This main branch that runs the length of the greenhouse is what we call the rod, and that's permanent. We never prune that, that is there all the time. And then it produces side shoots all along the length. And they're the side shoots where the grapevines will produce their flowers and then we get the grapes. So basically all we do at this time of the year, and it's really, really simple, looks quite hard, is we want to get rid of all of this twiggy growth. So using a pair of sharp secateurs, I'm literally going to prune back, take any little dead bits off, prune back all these twiggy bits all the way along the vine. Really is simple to do. Can't go wrong. If you prune a bit too hard, it's not going to damage it at all. And work my way along this rod or this permanent branch. Make sure you don't cut the wire that holds it up. And what will happen is, once we've cut all of those off, which tidies it up nice and neatly, as you can see, we've got these lots of little stumpy bits on here. They will then produce a nice new shoot in the spring. On that there'll be the flowers and the grapes, and then we start to do the summer pruning. Otherwise the greenhouse would get completely overrun with branches. So I'm going to work my way along there later on, finish it off. So that is the pruning finished. But one last thing you can do, in time we get very flaky bark along this main rod, and this can be a really good hiding place for things like mealybug and scale insects. So just using a knife, just pull off or scrape off some of this loose bark along there. You don't have to do it all in one year, just a little bit at a time, but it really does make a difference if you can take some of that off, because it means that any little insects that would be hiding are being exposed, and you can see it takes it back to the old bark on there. So try to get it done, as I say, by the end of January in a greenhouse, a little bit later outside, and then that will keep your vine manageable and you'll get a much better crop in the summer. So if you want to keep your greenhouse just frost-free, oh, and by the way, before we start that, do you remember we planted some paper white bulbs back in September? I've kept them really cold. These have been in the polytunnel and just come in here. They're just starting to open now, and over the next few weeks we're going to get about 7 or 8 lovely flower stems off there, and they've got the most wonderful perfume, so worth doing for next year for you. But if you want to keep your greenhouse frost free, I have a heater in mind that runs on a thermostat, so it keeps it, as I mentioned, frost free all through the winter. But if you've got a small greenhouse or just a cold frame or a porch where you've got 1 or 2 plants that you're worried might get frosted on a very, very cold night, this is worth trying. This is a new little greenhouse frost preventer. It's made from terracotta. It's even got a little glazed depression in the centre, so in the summer you can use it, light the candle, put some scented oils in there and use it on your patio to keep the mosquitoes away. And inside it, it's got an environmentally friendly candle that's made from recycled waste in there that burns for up to 48 hours. And if we light the candle and then pop the lid on, put that in the centre, and stick that on the floor. Obviously this greenhouse is too big for this to work, but in a small little greenhouse, or say cold frame, that will just keep the frost off overnight. It gets lovely and warm and just gives off that little bit of base heat just to stop the frost damaging any really tender plants. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels this week, and if you've enjoyed it, as always, please share it to all your friends on Facebook and on YouTube, and we'll be back next week with more things to do in and around the garden.